Circa Million contest picks for week 5 of the NFL season. I am Nick Whalen, back with my good pal John McKechnie. John, you joined me on a couple of these videos early in the season. You do the RotoWire Sports Betting Pod with us, where we break down every single NFL game from a props perspective, a betting perspective each week. We'll be recording that later tonight. Make sure you check that out on YouTube. Check that out on Twitter, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the show, man. We bounced back from what was a fairly rough week 3. We took our third push of the season in week 3. We lost a couple tight ones, but we came out of week 4, 3-2, feeling pretty good. We won on the Chargers. We won on the Dallas Cowboys. That was thankfully a no sweat bet as they dominated the New England Patriots. And we won on the Seattle Seahawks on Monday night. That one felt good as well to close out the week. We did lose on the Philadelphia Eagles. That was one that I felt great about. Still kicking myself for trusting the Eagles in that spot. We kind of knew they were walking into a trap. But one I do not feel bad about, John. We were personally victimized. I consider this a hate crime by Patrick Mahomes sliding at the 1.5 yard line. Was it the right move? Sure. Was he being a good sport by not taking it into the end zone when he absolutely could have? Yes. But man, we almost tasted a 4 in 1 week in Circa Million. That would have been big.
So that was tricky because after the Chiefs landed their first punch with that long Pacheco run, it's like, okay, game on. Like the Chiefs are about to run away with this. And then they got stuck in the mud a little bit. The Jets defense, very credible. And then Zach Wilson looked something like an NFL starting quarterback for stretches there. So all of a sudden, that huge number, 9.5 on the road, it got pretty dicey. But you did feel, and I felt particularly tortured on this one because I was at the Atlanta airport at the bag pickup carousel. Yeah. And so I just see that the Chiefs have the ball with the opportunity to cover the spread, but I can't physically watch it. And I'm just tortured. And then I see how it ends. And then I see the video footage of how it ended. And it was just that meme on the internet of just the guy just taking all these stabs to the, oh my God, so brutal. But we digress. That's the game you play when you're betting on a huge favorite like that on the road. But we're on to week 5, and yes, it was important for us to bounce back, and we broke our little afternoon curse because we had not been having much success in the afternoon window. Got that out of the way, so we're feeling good again.
So to make matters worse, on Sunday, John, all day I thought we had the Vikings. We put the picks in on Friday. I was up north, doing a golf weekend, so it wasn't super locked in until Sunday morning. And I'm driving home, streaming the games on my iPad in the passenger seat of my car, and I'm just sweating out this Vikings game. There's the 99-yard pick six, there's the other terrible interception by Cousins, and I'm just like, oh my God, we're gonna lose on the Vikings in Circa Million. Vikings end up pulling out the game. I'm freaking out. I'm cheering. I'm hooting and hollering. Then I go and look at the email confirmation from Circa and realize that I didn't actually play the Vikings. So I was sweating out this entire game that wasn't even on the card. It turned out we had, in fact, gone with the Eagles instead. So we're going to be a little more straight this week. We're going to be locked in. No question about that. I want to start with Thursday Night Football, John, real quick, since we are recording this on Thursday afternoon. I don't feel good about playing either side of this Bears-Commanders game. What say you?
I think you're right. I think initially, when you see the lines come out for a given week, especially one involving the Bears, of course they're going to lose by a touchdown, of course. And then the week progresses, you start digging through the numbers, the historical data. You did a good deep dive on Thursday Night Football and home favorites and how they perform against the spread. And it's not a pretty sight. And Washington, for as good as they looked last week and as bad as the Bears have been all year, I think it makes sense from the public sentiment to lean Washington here. And, it is some semblance of a public play, 62% of the action is coming in on Washington. But as much as I like them to win this game, doing so by a touchdown with Sam Howell at quarterback, as much as I like him relative to your average guy, I'm just not quite there. But at the same time, I'm just breaking down both sides, talking out of both sides of my mouth. But by that same token, I would feel real dumb if I picked the Bears and then they just get blown out. I was like, what did I even think I was thinking?
Yeah, you mentioned that home team stat. Home teams 19-30 ATS on Thursday Night Football since 2020. They are 23-26 straight up. So I do like the Commanders here. I think the Commanders win this game, but the number locked at 6 in Circa Million, and I don't love that. I think the Bears showed us just enough offensively, and I think Justin Fields kind of going rogue and doing what he does best is what's ultimately a good thing for this offense. And we saw enough of that last week to think that it maybe carries over. So, if it was Commanders 3.5, Commanders 4.5, maybe I would think about it. But I don't think we're going to throw that one on the card this weekend. Before we get into the 5 games that we're targeting, and we'll talk about a few more quickly that maybe will be in consideration, we got a message from our presenting sponsor. We are playing in the Circa Million 5 contest after all, and it is football season at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, featuring the best pool in history. John, you and I can attest to that. Stadium
Absolutely.
swim, 3 levels, 6 pools, 143-foot diagonal screen, 143 feet. That is massive. Stadium swim is America's favorite place to watch football. They play every game every week, college, pros. This time of year, you get baseball. We got hockey starting up. You got NBA preseason going on right now. You can catch all the action poolside at Circa from a variety of seating options. They got day beds, temperature-controlled cabanas. I mean, it's the whole 9 yards out at Circa. Check out Stadium Swim. It's located at Circa Resort and Casino, and it is open 365 days a year. All sports, all seasons. You can book today at circalasvegas.com. Again, that is circalasvegas.com. Let's get into it, John. We're in agreement this week, at least on 3 or 4 of the games that we like. These last few weeks we've been conferencing off air, and there's been some pushback on certain games, but I like that we are of the same mind on some of these. And we start with the early game on Sunday, second straight game in London for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tell the listeners what side we're on here.
Folks, we like the Buffalo Bills. My concerns over the Bills coming into the year, it felt great after week 1. The last 3 weeks, less so. I'm becoming sold on the Bills, at least in the regular season. Not sure about the long-term outlook for them once we get to January. But for right now, they are absolutely one of the best teams in the AFC. And everything that the Jags do feels like pulling teeth. It is so difficult for them to find any semblance of offensive rhythm right now. And the Bills have certainly found their offensive rhythm. Diggs coming off that massive game against the Dolphins this past weekend. Josh Allen looking pretty dialed in, just generally really nice touchdown pass to Gabe Davis in that one. It just feels like this is a great spot for the Bills. And I have a really hard time, like barring some sort of just like drastic change in how the Jaguars function offensively, that they're going to be able to hang in and cover this number. So for me, it's the Bills, and it's a pretty strong lean there.
Yeah, I think back 2 years ago during the Urban Meyer debacle when the Jaguars, I believe it was their lone win, took down the heavily favored Bills. But that game was in Jacksonville. The one holdup I have here is the London factor, right? I think that makes this a tougher evaluation. If the Bills are the home team, if this was in Buffalo, obviously we'd be getting probably another point or two in favor of the Bills. But it is hard to gauge, especially because Jacksonville is in the unique position of staying in London. Like I think it's even more of an advantage for the Jaguars who are comfortable in this setting than it normally would be. No Cherry White for the Bills, losing that big piece on defense, that is huge. But I'm with you, man. I just the Jaguars, have not looked great against some okay to bad defenses so far, and now you're bringing in what's probably the best defense in the NFL right now, or at least what's looked like the best defense in the NFL over the last 3 weeks. I mean, Buffalo has won 3 straight games by at least 28 points. Like I feel like the Bills have some wiggle room here. Like I think they could get off to a slow start. I think they could commit a turnover in the first half. And the Jaguars just they're not the type of team that's going to run away with games. They're still struggling mightily, converting third downs, converting fourth downs. Still so many short passes. They do get Cam Robinson back at tackle after his suspension. That should help. But I still think this Bills pass rush ultimately overwhelms that Jags deep or offensive line. Looking at these international games, John, favorites are 39-1 straight up. They're 26-14 ATS. Josh Allen, 45 of his 59 career wins straight up have come by at least 7 points. So usually when the Bills win, they win big. I did hear this good stat though on a podcast, the Dream Preview Pod with RJ Bell this morning. This is wild to me, but it kind of makes sense. Josh Allen has never gone 2 straight games without a turnover. And I may remind you, he did not have a turnover last week against Miami. So history strongly suggests that at some point Josh Allen is going to lose a fumble or throw a pick in this game. And maybe that helps keep Jacksonville involved. But I'm with you. I have not seen enough from the Jags offensively to think that they can hang with the Bills.
Right, and it's a very interesting stat when it comes to Allen and the turnovers, but I think it just kind of underscores that despite the fact that he has these turnover issues, he still nails with these wins. When they win big, like you were saying. So it just doesn't really change the DNA. It just kind of like is an interesting nugget. And I think if he turns it over on Sunday, no one's going to be surprised. That's just kind of his style. But I don't know if the Jags make him pay for it. And I was talking to Mario Puig on the Fantasy Football Pod earlier today, and he was talking about how Press Taylor has kind of turned this Jags offense into about as predictable as it gets. Like it's pretty apparent on film that the teams essentially know what the Jags are going to be doing every single time that they snap the ball. And when you have a defensive mind like McDermott, getting that advantage, I think even more so. We're going to have a really hard time seeing the Jaguars score points unless they're set up in short fields. If Josh Allen turns it over multiple times, then maybe it's a different story. But by the same token, I just don't think the Jaguars offense is going to be able to get in gear and hang with the Bills, who I think are going to have very little trouble on offense.
Yeah, Bills are holding opponents under 31% conversion rate on third downs. That is not a recipe for success for the Jags. So we like the Bills -5. That's where that number locked over at Circa. All right, Miami Dolphins, they are 11.5-point favorites. It's a big number. You'll still see this at 11 at some books. Circa Contest locked it at 11.5. John, it's hard not to love Miami this week. My question to you is, how careful do we need to be? Like, at what number would you back away from Miami? I mean, I think we need to approach this one with some degree of caution, just because there's not like a single metric that points to here's why the Giants can hang around. And sometimes when it's so overwhelming in favor of one team, you want to kind of take a step back, look at it from 1,000 feet above and see if you're missing something. But I struggle to find any reason why the New York Giants should be able to hang around with Miami.
I do too, and that's why it's kind of scary, right? Because I mean, we all saw what happened Monday night. I mean, maybe the most abysmal performance on a Monday night game that we've seen in quite some time. This line has moved and moved and moved in the direction of the Dolphins. A couple weeks ago, that this was 9.5. Now we're looking at that 11.5 number. So it is concerning. Miami, the money coming in on them is like a huge liability this weekend. Like they're getting over 90% of the money so far. And so it's like, that is a very public play, but the public has succeeded a lot this year. Last week was a very public card as far as the results are concerned. And, when you look at the Giants, there's nothing that is getting better for them necessarily. Like even if they get Saquon Barkley back, the offensive line is still in such shambles to where you just wonder if he's going to have room to run. I was shocked when I checked the box score on Tuesday morning that Daniel Jones actually completed 27 of his 34 pass attempts on Monday night. It's like every time he dropped back, it looked like just some sort of clown show going on.
I don't remember a single completion.
No. His completions are to make a college comparison, like the old Mike Leach offense is like the quarterback would have like a 5 yards per attempt and like 7 yards per completion, like an extension of the run game was a lot of the passes. And that's effectively what Daniel Jones is doing right now as far as his dropbacks go. So if they fall behind and they're having Daniel Jones drop back a bunch, they're screwed. Like there's no other way to put it. Like that you have them behind. I mean, we saw it on Monday night against a far less formidable Seattle offense, that they start to get the lead, and all of a sudden the defense is able to key in, and that we see how it went from there. So even with this being as public as it is, I mean, the Dolphins would basically have to play like a C+ game for the Giants to cover this, and coming off of a loss the way that they did, I think they want to rinse it, and I think they want to prove to everybody that they are who we thought they were coming out of that Denver game. So give me the Dolphins here, even with the big number.
Yeah, you mentioned this is a public side, Miami. I mean, public teams are 33, 24, and 3 ATS through 4 weeks. So I think, conventional knowledge is you might want to fade the public, but hasn't been the case so far. We'll see how that progresses as the year goes along. You mentioned Saquon did not practice today, so you still could play on Sunday. We'll see, but not exactly trending in the right direction. The Giants' entire offensive line is banged up. Andrew Thomas almost certainly will not play in this game. That's a huge loss. The Giants are the worst offense in the NFL in terms of EPA. They're one of the worst defenses in the league. They're one of the lowest graded tackling teams at PFF.
That's so surprising, right? Because their defense kind of helped carry them last year. And they have the same defensive coordinator, Thibodeau, in year 2. Like, you'd think things would be as good or better this year.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, they're dead last in pressure rate. They have the fewest pressures, only 18 quarterback pressures so far on the year. I mean, I could just keep reading stats all day. We haven't even mentioned it's a short week for the Giants. They played on Monday night. Obviously they're going to be down in Miami. They always make the away teams like just bake in the sun on that sideline all day.
Get the magnifying glass up to the ants.
Yeah,
everything.
Exactly. That's exactly the logic we're looking at. They actually are going to install a giant magnifying glass on the side of the stadium to try to light them on fire. The Giants also have not forced a turnover. They're the only team in the NFL through 4 weeks that has not forced a turnover. And it's like, if you're going to hang around with Miami, like, you need probably 2 or 3 big breaks to go your way. You might need a pick six. You're going to need to force a sack fumble or something like that. And the Giants have just shown no ability to do that. And on top of all this, Jalen Phillips should be back for that Miami Dolphins defensive line. So love this. I think it would have to be 14 and a half for me to really back away. But getting the Dolphins at 11 and a half, we're going to lock that one in alongside the Buffalo Bills. John, I think every week we're tempted to use our teams. I think we've involved the Jaguars, either taking their side or betting against them in 3 or 4 weeks so far. Your team is the Baltimore Ravens. How are you feeling about the Ravens -4 at the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I honestly feel great about them this weekend. I think whether it was going to be Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky back there, this offense is completely busted. There's some good statistics on that point from Sharp Football, talking about how 67%, so 2/3 of Pittsburgh's drives have resulted in a turnover or a punt. So that is the second worst mark in the league. I doubt that improves against Baltimore's defense that should be getting Marlon Humphrey back. In addition to just that defense in and of itself has been excellent through the first month of the season. And on a set of down basis, so like every fresh set of downs that the Steelers get, 61% of the time it gets to third down. So nothing is coming easy for them. It's brutal. The offensive line has not made the strides that a lot of people, myself included, were anticipating coming into the year. Jadeveon Clowney has been a one-man wrecking crew as far as pressures are concerned. I think he has as many pressures as the Giants do, based on the statistic you just threw out there. So he's collapsing stuff all the time. Roquan Smith doing what he's doing. Kyle Hamilton really arriving. It's a great defense right now, and against a bad offense. And I think also the Ravens offense under Todd Monken is starting to take shape a little bit more. I think last week's performance, Lamar Jackson throwing for 2 touchdowns, running for another 2. I think that kind of underscores that against a Cleveland defense that I view to be better than Pittsburgh's. So I think this is a great spot for Baltimore. I know that traditionally the underdog can cover in this rivalry game. Pittsburgh's obviously going to get up for this one, but I'm a guy who's on Ravens Twitter a lot. I see a lot of the rumblings and the quotes and everything. This is the most kind of trash talk that I've seen coming out of Baltimore going into a Pittsburgh game in a little while, actually. So basically of the Lamar Jackson era, I've not seen quite this amount of acrimony coming out of Charm City that we're seeing right now. So I'm pretty strong that the Ravens not only cover this one, but I would be comfortable taking them up to 7.5 even.
Ooh. Wow. Okay. Well, we're getting to that 4 here. So that's great news. As you mentioned, the underdog has covered 11 straight in this rivalry. Dogs are 15-1-1 ATS over the last 7 years. So, a lot of indications I think would point you toward Pittsburgh in this situation. But, we haven't even mentioned Kenny Pickett is banged up. And, I think ostensibly is going to start this game. And I wouldn't feel great about that. I think if you're Baltimore, it's not like Mitchell Trubisky scares you that much. But Kenny Pickett's looked terrible. And a banged up Kenny Pickett will likely be even worse than he's been. So, yeah, again, I think the trends, a lot of the trends would push you towards Pittsburgh, but we like the Ravens to go against those trends and cover the 4 points at the Steelers. All right, let's hit 2 more real quickly, John. The New York Jets, you see this number at +1.5 at a lot of books, but we're getting it at 2 in Circa. They're on the road at the Denver Broncos. We both love the Jets here. I will say it's not because of Zach Wilson. I'm not expecting Zach Wilson to carry over what he did against the Kansas City Chiefs. There's very little evidence to suggest that he will just pick up where he left off and suddenly be a league average quarterback. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Zach Wilson's still a negative for the Jets, but I love the spot for the Jets running game. I love the spot for the Jets defense. I think Denver playing the Bears and beating the Bears last week, kind of put some deodorant on the fact that this is probably the second worst team in the NFL. And they have the worst defense ever through 4 weeks in the DVOA era, which I know doesn't go back that far, but still. And look, having a team put 70 on you, yeah, that'll skew the numbers a little bit. But this defense has been awful. And look, the Jets defense Jets offense, has not been great. But if there's one team that they can rely on Breece Hall to move the ball against, I think it's this Denver Broncos defense.
And this is actually where Breece Hall suffered his injury last year. So
right.
some karmic retribution perhaps in the offing. And I think the Jets, for one reason or another, have decided that Dalvin Cook, and for good reason, is not it. So it's time to take the restrictor plate off of Breece. And back in the Iowa State days, people would say it's Brocktober when the calendar gets to this time of the year. It's always Breece-tober, and it really gets going this weekend. So I love the Jets here. The Broncos, as embarrassing as it is to give up 70 points to the Dolphins, it almost might be more embarrassing to give 28 points to what the Bears were through the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, injuries on the Denver side as well. We don't know about Javonte Williams quite yet. Could be a Jaleel McLaughlin week. A lot of people running out to grab him on the waiver wire in fantasy. I have no idea. You tell me.
Youngstown State, go Penguins.
Wow, that would have been my 200th guess. Nice work there. Jerry Jeudy also limited at practice today, so something to keep an eye on there. Denver has the advantage at quarterback. To me, that's about it. I like the Jets in this spot, and even after the loss to KC, even after that crushing Zach Wilson fumble, it feels like they at least maybe believe in themselves, or built some semblance of belief in Zach Wilson after last week. Like the vibes coming out of that loss for the Jets are significantly better than they were coming out of that New England and those Dallas games the previous 2 weeks. So we like the Jets +2 on the road. Where do we want to go with this last one, John? We got a lot of games in contention. Do we want to involve the San Francisco 49ers Dallas Cowboys game? Niners 3.5-point favorites at home. I'm not 100% on this one, but if we're taking a side here, I would lean 49ers.
I love the Niners here. I know that it's I think this is setting up to be the game in which I do not have a rooting interest, and it's being played in the regular season that I am the most excited for. This might be the best on paper matchup that we get this entire season. Maybe some of those Cowboys-Eagles games will kind of hold a candle to this, but I think Niners-Cowboys Sunday Night Football, that's a beautiful setup. And I think that the Cowboys are a top 5, top 6 team, but I think that this is the week that we learn just how far ahead San Francisco is from everybody else. And they're Christian McCaffrey right now and what they have scheming up for him and his talent. In addition to that, I mean, it's a one-man wrecking crew. And then when you get past that and you have a defense that's so worried about McCaffrey, Purdy's good enough to, get a lot out of Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. So you're really kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to this Cowboys defense. So really the only way that the Cowboys, I think, are going to be able to hold the Niners in check is if Micah Parsons just kind of goes sicko mode and is collapsing the line and gets after Purdy a lot. But that not being the case, I think that the 49ers kind of roll here and make a statement. I don't like Dak Prescott in this spot. I think him on the road against a very good defense like this, I think we start to see the bad Dak that can pop up his head on occasion. I mean, we saw a bad game out in the desert on the road earlier this year. Much tougher environment this time around. I see a couple turnovers from him to help kind of lead us into the Niners covering this number.
I'm with you. I think you laid it out really well. The Niners, much like the Bills, it feels like when they get going, they win these games big, right? It doesn't even seem to matter who the opponent is. I mean, they've scored 30 plus in 9 of their last 10 regular season games. I looked that up to try to find some context for one of my articles this week. The Commanders / Redskins / football team have scored 30 plus 8 times in their last 86 games. And they've done it twice this year. So it was 6 out of 82. And the Niners have done it 9 of their last 10. I mean, look, I don't think they're going to go undefeated. They're going to get tripped up at some point. Maybe this is that week. I don't think they're invincible, but there's just something about the Niners that they just don't have the letdown games that other teams do, and even if they do have an off game, that they're still going to be in it. They're still going to give themselves a chance to win this game. I mean, the hook here is kind of what scares me. Certainly you could see Dallas, kind of running with San Francisco offensively. This could be a 34-31 type of game. But I think what you said about Dak Prescott, and if Dallas gets off to a slow start, if it's 10-0 San Francisco at the end of the first quarter, San Francisco has the Cowboys where they want them, right? You kind of want Dak Prescott feeling like he has to make big plays.
And it's a small sample. It's just 2 games, obviously, but on the road, like the home road splits for Dak are really jarring. At home, completing 81% of his passes at a 7.2 YPA. Away, under 60%, 6.1 yards per attempt. I mean, that's pretty bad. That's where his interception has come in as well. So I think that this is a really, really brutal spot for Prescott. And if that ends up being the case, it's not like Tony Pollard is going to be able to save them. Yep. So I can't see a way in which the Niners don't do this.
Yeah, Dak has the lowest ADOT this season of any quarterback. That includes that's out of 34 quarterbacks. So that includes like Andy Dalton and all those guys. He's 17-25 ATS career against teams above 500. And this Niners team, I think right now looks like the most complete team in football. So we are on the 49ers minus 3.5. Is there one or two other games that you want to hit quickly here, John, as potential candidates for that 5th spot?
To me, the Texans are very alluring, but I think, there's so much going in favor for them. Like that, it might be better to stay away because Atlanta, you look at them, they're stuck in the mud on offense. Desmond Ridder, not it. I'm sending turning on the Taylor Heineke signal. It's flashing up on the Pencil Building here in Atlanta, trying to get it going. Because at least Taylor Heineke is entertaining. Also, Falcons having just played in London, you worry about that with no bye week in between. And Houston, dispatched of probably not a good Pittsburgh team, but the fact that they won a Pittsburgh team indeed. So the fact that they won the way that they did and the way that Stroud is playing, like it all points to Houston. But I just am a little bit worried that Atlanta finds its groove and is able to cover this number. So I'm leaning towards staying away, but if I had to take a side, I would go Houston. And then I want to get your thoughts on Minnesota, Kansas City, because that's one that I just simply cannot figure out.
This is just blind faith in the Chiefs. And I know the Chiefs scored us last week. They were a 7-10 ATS team last season. So they're kind of the opposite to me of the Bills and the 49ers. Like when they win, they don't tend to win big, and they don't necessarily go for these blowout type of scores unless they're playing the Chicago Bears, of course. I mean, they kind of do what it takes to win these games, and they're obviously focused on winning the Super Bowl. Like I compared it on the XM show last night with Jeff to like an NBA team, like the Milwaukee Bucks or the Boston Celtics or the Warriors during their run, when you get like 4 or 5 years into this contention window, the regular season just doesn't mean as much. You don't feel like you have to get the 1 seed. You don't feel like you have to blow teams out. Like to me, the Chiefs are kind of just on this slow buildup to make sure that they're peaking and healthy for the playoffs. All they care about is winning the Super Bowl. I don't think they care what their ATS record is. I don't think they're making a point to try to win 14 games. Not that they don't want to, but I don't think they go into these games with that same mindset that some of the other elite teams do. So with the number sitting at 4 against a Minnesota offense that, at the end of the day still has a very good quarterback, a very productive quarterback, and the best receiver in the game, that does worry you a little bit, especially with the way the Chiefs allowed the New York Jets of all teams to climb back into that game last week. I still like the Chiefs side here. I think the defense is good enough. And Minnesota, by the way, they lead the NFL in turnovers. Right? They've lost 7 fumbles already on the year. Kirk Cousins has thrown 5 picks, I believe. They are very mistake prone. And I think, if we get 2 Vikings turnovers in this game, the Chiefs are going to cruise. But that's also a lot to ask. So, I'm okay if you have some pushback on this one. If you think Minnesota, can keep it to a field goal, I'd be okay omitting this one from the ticket.
I just feel like that what you said about the Chiefs is so dead on with how their week-to-week approach is during the regular season, especially this stage of it. They just want to get the win. They don't really care how pretty it looks. Obviously, the Vikings can make it look pretty. Their defensive backfield is shoddy to say the least. But the Chiefs' weapons, save for Travis Kelce in the passing game, are not impressive. And I think that there's enough firepower in this Vikings offense if they keep a lid on the turnovers, if they don't let them make the killer mistakes. I think that Minnesota is just feisty enough to hang around. I always hate Minnesota as a favorite, except for last week. But even then, we were still I can't do it, not even against Carolina. But as a dog at home, I think that there's enough at play here to where I would probably go Minnesota. But this to me, again, is maybe the toughest game to figure out of this entire slate. So probably leaving it off the card.
That's saying a lot. I mean, there's a handful of games that we didn't even touch on that weren't in consideration here. But in summary, we like the Bills -5 against Jacksonville. We like Miami to cover 11.5 against the Giants. We like the Baltimore Ravens to buck the trend of AFC North underdogs covering in this rivalry. They got to cover 4 at Pittsburgh. The New York Jets +2 at Denver, and the 49ers to cover 3.5 at home against the Dallas Cowboys. John, a couple hours from now, we'll be back live. You can watch our RotoWire Sports Betting Pod, where we'll talk all things NFL Week 5. You can catch that on YouTube. You can catch it on the RotoWire socials as well. It'll be archived as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. We thank everybody for watching today, everybody who's been following along this week. Best of luck to everyone playing in a similar contest. Really, if you're betting anything on the NFL this week, we wish you the best of luck. And John, look forward to catching up with you next week and seeing how things go.
Amen, man. This was a good one. I'm loving the card this week. It almost scares me how much I love the card this week.